we're going to talk about personal identity today. Now, if I were to ask all of you here, who are you? What would some of those answers be? Personal identity is one of those things that's actually quite hard, and it depends on who you are, right? If you're very introspective and you are always thinking about who you are, you might kind of know more about yourself than some other people do. But even if you're introspective and think about who you are all of the time, there are moments in our lives where we have what I would call identity crises, right? I've had so many of these. I'm currently in one, right? Where the events happening around us shape who we are, and mental illnesses shape who we are, catastrophes shape who we are. There's so much that makes up our identity, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is what makes those up. So think about that as we move on. So one of the first things that we were going to talk about, and we're going to use this word a lot in this class, so let's make sure we really understand what the master status, is. So a master status is a significant position or positions that a person occupies within society that affects our identity in almost all social situations. Meaning they're so core to our identity that they affect how we see the world, right? And thus we make judgments based on that positionality that we have looking out into the world. So first we have our race or ethnicity. Those are, I mean, these are one way to think about master status is what things can you not really leave at the door when you walk into a room, right? I can't really leave my race at the door. It's kind of right here. Education level, I can't really leave it at the door. I could pretend that I'm a different education level than I'm not, but I know what I know because of how much education I've had or not had. Gender, can't really leave that at the door. It comes with me wherever I go. And so I mean, not obviously physically leaving something at the door, but wherever we go, whatever decisions we make, whoever we communicate with, our race, our education level, our gender, political affiliation, sexual orientation, religion, age, economic standing, culture, all of those things make up who we are, and thus how we respond to the situations in the world around us and how we interpret them. So if you think about race, right? If you are from a particular race, especially if you're a person of color, do you see the world differently than maybe somebody who has more privilege, like a white person? Maureen, what were you going to say?
Well, I actually am a combination of few of each. So my mom is
Wow.
Jewish and my
Yeah.
father is Muslim. And
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely tell you that they don't see the world the same way. And so
Yes.
for me, the same thing. I mean, my sister and my brother, we came from the same house,
Yeah.
but we definitely see the world in different ways.
Absolutely.
Like who is who and who belongs to each group, each one of
Mm,
us sees it differently. And gender too. My
yeah.
sister obviously is a female and my brother is a male. I can really see how
Yeah.
they really think about people differently. Not in a bad way or anything. I'm not
Yeah.
criticizing.
But it's
Just
different.
like, just the way they
Yeah.
take in. Something is weird.
Absolutely. So what you're talking about now is how they're perceiving and interpreting the world around them, and thus how we react to those things. So Maureen, thank you for sharing that, especially if you are mixed, right? You have two cultures at work. And do we know what culture is? But culture is how we are brought up to know what is, you know, everything around us, what's normal versus not normal, what we value versus what is not as important, right? Our culture tells us how to sit, how to stand, how to, be polite, what respect is versus not. I mean, it's everything. It surrounds us and it brings us up in the world. And so Maureen is talking about a few things. She has maybe two cultures happening at the same time, and perhaps two races or ethnicities. And those two things, especially if you're a mixed kid from two different races or cultures, you often see the world in a much more complex way than most people, because you are having to operate within two different versions of the world on those different levels and spectrums. So all of these things will definitely frame the way that we view the world, and then how the world views us because we are presenting in it, right? So if we're talking about religion, right? Religion is really based on belief. So if you believe in God, you're going to walk through this world a lot differently than somebody who doesn't believe in God. And it doesn't mean it's better or worse. It just means that we see the world fundamentally different. And that's how it's a little bit harder to always connect easily with other people, because we have different master statuses. All these things that we bring with us, we can't necessarily change. And we are born into it, right? So age is another one that I might add, is we see the world very differently, especially generationally, where there's different events happening, right? We hear a lot about baby boomers giving millennials a hard time and millennials giving baby boomers a hard time. So there's this difference in generation that's a really interesting way that we see the world as well. But now we're going to talk about kind of the components of the self, right? We obviously know our race and our gender and some of those things, but these are more introspective things that you kind of that you do when you're in moments of self-reflection. So we're going to talk about the self-concept, reflected appraisal, face and face work, and personality. So self-concept, these are the relatively stable perceptions that we hold about ourselves, right? And they're based on culture. So our cultural identity, our social identity, how we interact with others around us, and then our personal identity, meaning who we see ourselves as when we think inward. So, our self concept, in terms of our cultural identity, this is our sense of belonging to a particular culture. Again, culture is a lot of these things that I put up here: traditions, heritage, the language you speak, the religion you're a part of, your ancestry, thinking patterns such as what we believe, what we value as important or worthy, and what we think is normal versus not normal, right? In some cultures, like Turkey, men hold hands as a sign of friendship. In America, if two men held hands, we would think that it was only a romantic thing, right? Other norms could be just what types of toilets you use. In India, at least in Chennai, where I went, they use holes in the ground, which to me makes a lot more sense. But I'm from America. I've always used a toilet. So those things are what tell us how we operate in the world, right? Even how we eat. In India, they eat with their hands for most meals. And in United States, we use forks, knives, and spoons. And in Japan or China, they use chopsticks. So stuff as simple as that. But also the social structures. So the hierarchy in our culture is different. In US American culture, what kind of structure of power do we have? Can you think about it? In terms of maybe money? Yeah, Natalia.
Patriarchal.
Oh, very patriarchal. Which is what? What does that mean?
Oh, how do I, that's a loaded question.
So, I
Um,
mean, it means that we really value male
it,
power, right? And
agreed. I mean, hope it's changing.
it is.
It's changing, which I'm very happy about, but majority of the time, I would say
Absolutely.
it's patriarchal. Yes.
Absolutely. Because we tend to think that one gender is more powerful or persuasive than another. This is why we have not had one female or woman president, right? We have a vice president now, so we are seeing things change. But that's absolutely right, Natalia. But in our US American culture, we also have social structures in terms of uh, money, right? So we have what we call the working class, the working middle class, upper middle, and then upper class, right? And we had a whole argument about this when we were talking about being the 99% that don't own the top 1% of people own the majority of the United States wealth, right? So that is going to influence your view of the world and how you see your culture. And again, this is multifaceted. There's many components because we're not often just part of one culture. I can say I'm part of the US American culture, but it kind of gets even smaller than that. I'm part of California culture as well, which is very different than New York culture. Anybody from New York?
Me.
Really?
Yeah.
Natalia.
Yeah. And I am a product of my environment. So if I offend anyone, please let me know. I apologize in advance.
So what Natalia is referencing right now is the type of communication that happens for New Yorkers, which my stepmom is a New Yorker. Half my family lives in New York. My brother lived in New York and for 10 years. New Yorkers, they value a sense of bluntness or direct communication, right? Don't really leave anything up for interpretation. It is, this is how it is, this is how I feel, which can in Californian culture seem very aggressive. Same thing with Boston. If anybody's from Boston, they have a very straightforward way of communicating, but they also have a way of identifying with their friends in making fun of one another.
It happens in my family too. I'm Polish, and teasing is a sign of endearment. It's
Yeah.
really weird, but it is cultural.
It is. And so our culture is multifaceted. It can come from the town that we're in to the state to the, country, but it can also be where our parents are from and their cultural traditions and heritages rub off on us, right? It's also the way we speak our dialect. And these are central to our sense of self because this is how we were born to be in the world. So you might already be thinking, okay, I think I'm getting an idea of maybe what my culture is and how complex it is. But now we're going to shift to social identity. So, cultural identity is the first part of our self concept. The second part is social identity. And this is what we might call two different things: reflected appraisal and cognitive conservatism. And what this means is that our self concept doesn't really exist at birth, it is a product of our social interaction with the people around us. We learn who we are by how other people see us. So, reflected appraisal, reflection, like a mirror, is the mirroring of the judgments that people make about us that we internalize and take as our own. Let me make that super clear. If somebody told you your entire life, you are a great artist, which is what I was told, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm a great artist. So I could go to art school. I don't have to go to school for something that makes sense. I could do whatever I want because I love art. And this is a real story, by the way. So I went to UCSB and I got my bachelor's in fine arts and I loved it. But when I got there, I had a reality check because all my life, my family had been telling me what a great artist I was. But when I got into an actual art school, I was kind of bottom of the pack. And my teachers definitely told me, you gotta step it up if you want to be in a good artist, right? And so I kind of had this reality check of, whoa, am I a good artist, or have my family just been telling me that and I internalized it as truth? Isn't that crazy to think about? That most of the things that we're told when we're growing up, we internalize as something that is our own. It's only with deep self reflection that we can kind of say, huh, these things that I've been told, both good and bad, are they actually representative of me or not? You've come to a place in your identity and your world where you can recognize and either take on someone's reflected appraisal or say, no, that's not me. But when we're young, we don't do that as easily because we have to build our identity first, and we build it from the people around us and how they react to us. So when you were a kid, is there anything that people told you about yourself that you've taken into adulthood? And I
No.
know that there are, but you got to just try to think about what those things could be. It could be something as simple as, well, let's think about it this way. We have a lot of people who identify as women in the class. When you were growing up, not just by your friends, family, but also media, did you have an idea about how your body should look? Same thing with men. It's actually not super different for women, but did you have an idea of what you thought looked good versus bad?
And especially with all those reality shows where,
I know.
I mean, I'm going to say that I hope I don't offend anyone. They wouldn't take someone who weighs super overweight, to
Yeah.
be in a reality show because that doesn't show good in front of the camera.
True.
And
I mean, you're
this
absolutely right.
way, in this way, they will show that there is a standard in the society. And if that is going viral and everybody's so excited about it, then of course that's what you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that really takes a lot. It's where you come from, what type of
Right.
relationship you have with the way you look from home, like how my
Yeah.
mom taught me and
Yeah.
what she told me to do and not to do. And then plus what I see outside,
Oh, yeah.
it's kind of like building up an image. And then you learn
Absolutely.
with the years. I think we just drop it with the years. As a woman, I don't know how men are, but I do know men who are
Right.
very, very affected by what they see on TV.
Absolutely. I mean, we all are very receptive to the messages that we get. So if we get a similar message over and over and over and over again, we are likely to take it on, right? And so it's this kind of cyclical thing that you get told something when you're little, and if you hear it from several different sources, you really take it on. And so if we're looking at gender specifically, because this is kind of where we fell, um, the media and our family train us how to operate within a particular gender that is supposed to match our sex at birth. So, sex is what we are born with in terms of genitalia, but gender is how we identify as either male or man, female, woman, right? So, there is a difference. And I happen to be cisgender, meaning that my identity of gender, woman, identifies with the sex that I was born with. And what all of that means is that from the second I was born, actually, before I was born, when my mother had a baby shower, what kind of clothes do you think that she got?
All female pinks and
Pink,
purples and
purple,
pretty,
frilly,
exactly, pretty.
lacy. Because while my mom is a total feminist, at that time in the 80s, it was, if you're having a girl, you're going to have all the pink stuff. You're going to have all the frills and all the lace and all the dresses and all these amazing things, right? And so they had decided what kind of where I lay on that femininity to masculinity spectrum before I was ever born. Right. And so when they put me in those pink clothes, that was already telling me something about who I should be as a woman. When they chose movies or shows for me to watch, they were helping me decide who I should be. When my dad told me that I needed to suck in my stomach because all the other girls do, I listened, right? Because I was hearing these messages. When my aunt scolded me for sitting with my legs open at a campfire and told me to close my legs because that's what a woman does, I learned how to be a woman. I learned I need to take up less space. I cannot just be open. I need to wear certain things that make my femininity more, enticing. I have to, I mean, I could go on forever, but do you see where I'm going with this? That from the second that you are, identified in your mom's belly, there are certain things at play both culturally and societally that are going to affect how you see yourself. It's only with deep self-reflection later on, once we have a self-identity to work from, that we can undo some of those patriarchal ideas that maybe affect our gender. But then this happens with everything else. It happens with our sexual orientation. It happens with our cultural identity, which parts we want to take on and which parts we don't. Right? If you are from two different cultures, I bet you have experienced this, where there's some parts of your parents' culture and some parts of the US American culture that you want to take on, but some that you don't, because you've started to identify what works for you and what doesn't. So, this whole idea of the self concept is that it's brought up by how people respond to us and treat us as children and as babies. And once we get an idea of who we are, we can start changing those things slowly once we get experience and we have relationships and we try different identities. I mean, how many of you dressed differently in elementary school or high school that you're like, oh, I'm embarrassed about? Maybe not enough time has passed for some of you, but but I look at 1 year in high school, I never want to look back on. I'm so embarrassed about it because I was trying on identities to see which one fit. The idea is that, as we grow, we question our identity. When things happen around us, it affects our identity. And so we are just kind of a work in progress. We're always looking inward to see, who am I? What do I like? What do I not like? Right? So sometimes when we're young, it's normal to try on different identities. And it doesn't mean that it's we're totally unstable all the time, right? Because our core identity largely stays the same. That's the whole idea that you hear about people saying you can't change somebody else. That's mostly true, right? Our core sense of self is often pretty unshakable. But the things that are a little bit more surface based change all the time. And so what we like and don't like, exactly, Maureen, that changes, right? We can be an artist and then decide, actually, I want to bake. I can be an electrical engineer and then say, I want to fly planes. There's so much that we can change. Okay, the other part of this that is how we see ourselves is called cognitive conservatism. So once we have a basic self concept, so remember, we build our self concept from the reflected mirroring of judgments from other people around us. Okay, once we have that basic social identity or self concept, we seek people who will reaffirm what we know about ourselves. What I mean by this is that if you have always been told, and so you have identified for yourself that you are a selfless person, meaning that you give to other people more than you get, when you come up against somebody who calls you selfish, what are you likely to do or say to that person? Are you likely to be like, oh, yeah, you're totally right? Oh, Natalia.
Deny.
Yeah, you'll
Deny it.
say, no,
Like, that's
you
not what
don't.
I've been told my entire life. I don't quite agree with that.
Right. And that we can get to a place where we are so confident about our self identity that we ultimately don't care what other people think. That's a lot of practice and a lot of work. And that's incredible that you've gotten to that place. Woo! But there's also this element of the level of empathy that we have. So, how much we care about other people, how much we feel alongside other people, will also determine that how we react in a cognitive conservatism place. So, if somebody says to me that you are selfish, and I care about that person deeply, even if I don't think I'm selfish, I will start to believe that I am a selfish person because I care so much about this one person's perspective, because I'm having empathy with them as well. So while we tend to seek out people who reaffirm who we are, if we butt up against somebody who does not affirm that, if there's somebody that is not, we don't really care about deeply, it's easy to say, no, you just don't know who I am. Thank you very much. That's not who I am. But if it's somebody we care deeply about, that we have empathy for, it's a little harder to go against what they're trying to say to us, right?
Yeah.
So now we're going to move to the personal part. So we've done cultural, we've done social. Now it's personal. This is how we feel internally, right? So emotional states, how emotional we are. It's everybody's on a spectrum. Highly emotional people are over here. I'm like all the way to the end of the room, and the less emotional people are over here. So even just how we experience emotion and then share it with other people is a very personal thing, right? I'll give you an example. When I met my husband, he is the most introverted, serious, organized, logical person I know, and I am the complete opposite. I am very emotional. I feel everything. I'm loud, I'm extroverted. And when I met him, he one day we were driving and he's like, I feel weird. And I go, what do you mean you feel weird? Are you okay? And he goes, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, tell me what's happening. What is the feeling? And he goes, I don't know. It's like tight right here. I'm like, oh, is it like pressure or tightness in your chest? And he's like, yeah, and it's kind of hard to breathe. I go, oh, honey, that's stress. You're having anxiety. And he goes, oh, is that what that is? And I'm like, what a weird world that you've never had anxiety and you couldn't even name it when you felt it. But that's the reality for some people. For me, I'm like a roller coaster. I have anxiety and OCD and depression and all these things. And so I've always known how I feel, but that's not the case for everybody. And this is also something that we're going to come back to when we talk about relationships, because that is very different if you're someone who always knows how they feel and somebody who really doesn't. So emotional states are part of how we see ourselves. Now, talents, what you're good at and what you're not good at, that's part of how we see ourselves. What we like, what we dislike, your roles. We have many different roles that we play, and it absolutely influences our sense of self. So, for instance, I'm a teacher, right? part of my likes, dislikes, emotional states, talents, attitudes, beliefs, and values all shaped the fact that I wanted to be a teacher. But then when I became a teacher, that became a role in itself. And now I identify as a teacher wholeheartedly, right? That's part of my identity of how I see myself is teacher. I also see myself as mother, as wife, as daughter, as sister. I don't know, if you play sports, you're a goalie or a pitcher, or whatever those things are, the things that you do, the position you occupy in society. So sales associate, I will always have a little sales in my heart. I will always be a server in my soul because those are things that I've done most of my life. So attitudes are a general just positive or negative feeling we have about something. How do you feel about school? How do you feel about sunbathing? I mean, these are silly things, but I want you to start thinking about what your attitude is about certain things. So when somebody says, oh, you have a bad attitude, they could be talking about, like, let's say you're at work. If your attitude about working in a sales job is negative, that affects how you behave in that role, right? If my attitude about school, if I wake up in the morning and I say, I'm so psyched for school today, I've changed my attitude to be positive. And so I actually have a more positive experience. This is a positive psychology thing, that if you train your brain to be excited about things that ultimately you could have easily been like, ugh, I don't want to go to school, and change it instead to say, ooh, I get to go to school. What a privilege. You actually have a better time at school, learn more, and are more willing to take in the information you get that day than if you were to wake up and say, oh, I don't want to do it. Right? So we can actually effectively and very easily, most of the time, change our attitudes about things. And it changes the way we view the world. That's nuts. The second one is beliefs. So this is our core idea of what we believe is real in the world and not real, or true or not true, right? Some people believe that the earth is flat. It is not, but some people believe it as a core, I don't know why, part of their identity, like they have to believe this, or I don't know what will happen. But a more common belief is if you believe in God versus not believing in God. These are core to your self-identity, but it changes also the way that you interact with the world and how you see other people and how you see yourself, right? And then lastly, values. This is what we think is good, worthy, or important. So I value education. I think it is one of the most important things that any human can do for themselves, for not just self-worth and self-realization, but also for a better society. Because if we're all educated, we can have better discussions, not just arguments and fights. We can actually be better together, right? So I value education, family, or your children, or safety. I mean, these are all things that we value: safety, trust. Now, we're going to kind of end with a video today, and then we'll pick up with next week. But one of the things that even in COMM studies they don't talk about in terms of our self-identity is, do our memories of our lives make our identity as well? So if we are brought up by the events happening around us, the culture that we live in, the family that tells us who we are, the friends who mention who we are, if we're brought up learning who we are from other people, then get to a state where we start deciding by testing the world around us for who we are, then doesn't that also mean that our memories of our lives continually are part of our identity? What do you think?
I would say yes, but I would say definitely there are different parts of memories, like certain parts like happy
Yes.
memories and then painful memories as well.
Yes.
Like preferably for me, I have like certain memories I love to like remember, but then certain things I just don't like to I just like to leave in the past. That's it.
Absolutely. Oh, Eduardo, I love that you said that. How many of you have memories that you wish you could forget? And how many of you have, yeah, Alex, thank you. How many of you have memories that you often bring back up because it makes you feel so good, right? I mean, all of us have good memories and bad memories. But here's the thing we don't talk about: are memories always correct? I really want you to think about that for a second. Are our memories always an accurate representation of what actually happened? Everybody has memories, but what we don't recognize is how easily they are not correct, or not what they originally were when we first had them. There's a lot of research that looks at how our memories are not accurate representations of what has happened to us.
Hi, I'm Michael Stevens. But who are you? Do you even know who you are? Are you your memories?
I don't remember that.
I don't remember that at all.
Are you the choices you make? The focus tester is actually a magician.
That's scary.
Or are you your past?
I hit the back of my head and forgot my entire life, just like you hit a delete button on a computer.
Alex, are you good? Okay.
Have you ever looked at a photograph of yourself and thought, that's what I look like? Ugh. We often think we look bad or not right in photos because photos show us what we really look like to other people. The you that you're used to seeing is mirror you. Every mirror you look into reverses your face. Most selfie cameras do this too, so we tend to prefer that version of ourselves. If you want to see yourself in a mirror the way other people see you in real life, take two mirrors and position them at a 90-degree angle. What you see won't be yourself reversed, but how you look in real life. So who would you say you are really? Are you how you look? Or how you dress? Or are you the atoms that make you up? Because all of those things change throughout your life. Maybe the real common thread, that which doesn't change, is your history, your memory. But what if we remember things differently from the way they actually happened? Does that mean we don't know ourselves? False memories are frighteningly easy to create. Today, we're gonna make some, and we're gonna have a little fun doing it. We have created a fake game show called Who You Were. We're gonna bring contestants down memory lane and have them tell us about their past, some of which we're going to completely make up. We're gonna plant a few little seeds in this minefield and see if we can grow some fake memories. Hi, I'm Michael Stevens, and welcome to the show that takes you on a trip down memory lane, from who you are all the way back through who you were. Please welcome today's very special guest, Timothy DeLaGhetto. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to kind of dive into some memories?
Yeah, I don't really know what to expect.
To begin, though, let's give the audience a taste of your life.
Oh my God, let's take a look.
So Tim was raised in California, where he and his parents owned and operated a Thai food restaurant. Tim found popularity as a rapper, comedian, actor, and internet personality, and has attracted over 3 million subscribers. In order to kind of see how you became who you are today, let's go back to who you were.
Let's do it.
We spoke to your parents, and they told us some of their favorite memories from when you were very, very young.
Okay.
I'm going to start with some true stories before I slip in the false memory. When you were 7, you were pretty much held prisoner by a very controlling schoolgirl. The girl took control of your life and always wanted to know what you were doing.
I remember her. Like, she was like my best friend, sort of, but then she was also very like possessive of me.
But you guys aren't together still.
No, we might be Facebook friends.
Okay, here's a memory. You weren't a crybaby on the first day of school.
Yeah.
Until you noticed that all the other kids were crying, and then you joined in.
You know, I empathize with people.
Right.
And I was just kind of like helping them feel like we were all a team.
Now, here's the fake story we made up out of thin air. Here's another memory. When you were about 4 or 5 years old, you actually took a ride in a hot air balloon, but you dropped something from the balloon.
I don't remember that at all.
Really?
Yeah, like at all.
We're going deep,
I didn't
far
even
back.
know I've ever been in a hot air balloon until you just
It was in
me.
Echo Park.
Was it?
Yeah.
No clue.
Timothy is not accepting the story as truth yet. Time for our second subject.
I just want to add
Dylan,
very
how-
quickly, that was an example of cognitive conservatism, which is what? Anybody want to take a crack at it?
Implanting a false memory?
So not accepting the false memory, right? So he had an idea of who he was, and somebody came at him with something that he was not part of his internalized identity, and so he rejected it, saying, "No, I don't remember that." Right? But the real thing is seeing how that changes.
How are you?
I'm doing great, man.
You were inseparable from your Superman cape when you were young. Once you even tried to use your superpowers to stop a car driving down the street.
Yeah, to try to stop a car like with my hand.
Did
and
you
everything.
succeed?
You know, the dude hit his brakes.
Okay, next memory. So when you were about 4 or 5 years old, you took a ride in a hot air balloon and you dropped something.
Huh. I'm not sure if I remember that, to be honest.
Sometimes enriching the false story with a realistic detail can trigger the brain to begin filling in the memory. Here goes. Did you have a favorite toy or anything that maybe you had brought?
Oh, I mean, I had like some action figures, I think. I do remember like losing one. I'm not sure like that was like what happened if I was in a hot air balloon. That's a crazy adventure if I actually like did something like that.
Hi, Victoria. When you were around 4 or 5 years old, you took a ride in a hot air balloon and you dropped something.
I don't remember that.
4 or 5 years old? Up in the air?
No.
How many times have you been in a hot air balloon?
None.
Of course, none of the subjects remember the balloon ride. It never happened. But we aren't done with them yet. 24 hours from now, we'll take our subjects to Echo Park.
Okay.
The site of their supposed childhood balloon ride, to see if any of the seeds I planted today have taken root. This is where you took your first hot air balloon ride.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Okay, we're gonna skip forward to what happens. But let me just say, there's no hot air balloons in Echo Park, right?
You are the collection of all of your memories, right? I mean, that's your story. Those are things that happened to you and they're in the past. They can't be changed. But it can be created. An illuminating Harvard study found numerous examples of seemingly sane people who believed that they had recovered memories of past lives and alien abductions. And there's no deceit. These people actually believe that these events occurred.
And I remember I was just literally scared to death.
Once people have decided that a memory is real, the brain can fill in details that never happened, especially if the clues you're getting or what people are telling you isn't entirely accurate. Leading cognitive psychologist Elizabeth Loftus made that point in a 1996 experiment where she convinced over 25% of the subjects that they had been lost in a shopping mall as a child. Your brain will just take those untruths and run with them and fill in details out of nowhere, completely changing your personal history. When we last saw our Who You Were subjects, they did not recall the false memory we planted. When you were about 4 or 5 years old, you actually took a ride in a hot air balloon, but you dropped something.
I'm not sure if I remember that, to be honest.
You took a ride in a hot air balloon and you dropped something.
I don't remember that.
We've let the memory sink in overnight, and today we're going to see if physical stimuli will help solidify this story in their minds. Today is all about you and a little drive down your memory lane. This is where you rode over in a hot air balloon.
In a hot air balloon?
That's right.
Maybe my parents mistake me for another kid.
Some other kids. We'll get out and walk around and see what can come back. Let it all soak in and tell me if anything's coming back to you.
I don't know, man. It's not popping up.
You dropped something when you were in this hot air balloon. Will this be the detail that pushes Tim to remember the event?
What could I have dropped? What did I walk around with back then?
I spent another 15 minutes attempting to kickstart Tim's brain with details of the false balloon story. Has anything come back?
No.
Tim's brain doesn't seem susceptible to the false memory. Let's check in with the other subjects. This is where you took your hot air balloon ride.
Really?
Yeah.
This is Echo Park.
Yeah.
And
It was about 15 years ago. Yeah. You don't remember anything from this?
no,
Of course he doesn't. It never happened.
This is where you took your first hot air balloon ride.
This is.
This is it. Yeah,
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Does this bring back memories? You don't remember anything from this?
I do remember like something as a kid. I dropped something.
He dropped something. Now, how do you suppose he got that idea?
You dropped something.
Dylan's mind is gradually taking an idea we planted and adopting it as his own memory detail.
I could have been around here riding my bike. Then we took the hot air balloon ride and possibly dropped a Superman cape.
For some people, physical sensations can be an effective trigger to bring back real or imaginary memories.
What about smells and sounds?
Well, when I was 4 or 5 and I was here, I remember it smelling fresh.
This sensory memory may be a jumping off point to begin accepting the false memory.
You remember looking down on the park from above?
I might remember being able to overlook the water. I remember like standing over and squatting and like just being so happy to be up there and the wind blowing my hair back, and my dad kept telling me to sit down and I wouldn't sit down.
Yeah, you weren't scared. How high up were you?
Probably like 800 feet.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Victoria's false memory is beginning to take hold with the help of her imaginative subconscious brain.
What do you remember seeing from up in the hot air balloon?
The water fountain for sure.
Yeah?
And I could have been crazy, but I think that I could have felt like almost a little bit of mist hit my skin from the water fountain.
What color was the balloon?
I want to say it was red.
Red?
Yeah.
Let's see if the seed I planted earlier has taken hold. You took a ride in a hot air balloon and you dropped something.
I don't remember that.
You dropped something.
I did. At that age, I was a huge Barney fan. And I just like remember just like looking down and him just being gone.
About where did it fall, do you think?
I would say 6 or 7 blocks away.
Oh, really? So not in the water?
No.
By now, it seems Victoria's brain has turned our suggested memory into a complete childhood experience.
I remember waking up at like 9 in the morning, getting in the car, and then my mom and I being in the car, having no idea where we were going, because he loved to do that. Just put the family in the car and just go somewhere and just like surprise us.
Victoria is personalizing this false memory by merging it with pleasant details from her childhood.
And next thing you know, like we're just like flying over like the whole like greater Los Angeles area.
So who do you think was in the basket with you?
Well, definitely both my parents. I know we got something to eat afterwards. I almost like want to say like a churro or something like that.
Post-balloon churro.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
Now that our subjects are convinced that the balloon ride happened,
Oh, shoot.
it's time for a reality check.
Tell your mom the memory.
We went on like a hot air balloon ride, and I dropped, I think, my Superman cape. Why are you looking like that?
No, Dylan, that never happened. That never happened.
Wait, what?
There was never a balloon ride.
We made the whole story up. Well, you made most of it up.
Oh, wow.
But isn't that amazing?
Because remember, we planted that story.
No, that's actually really crazy. I was actually having like these like weird faint memories of me like looking over like the pond and like, you know, I don't even know.
Has Dylan been to Echo Park before?
Oh, wow.
And now it's Victoria's turn for a rude awakening from her father.
Hi.
Story's not true.
What?
You've never been in a hot air balloon.
What are you guys talking about? Why would you make that up?
Did you truly believe that you'd been in a hot air balloon?
Yes.
You remembered so many details.
Yes.
Of something that never happened.
Yes.
How many times have you been in a hot air balloon?
None.
So what were you remembering?
I'm not entirely sure because I really do feel like I have a memory.
We all are susceptible to this.
I really felt like I had experienced that experience.
And what about our YouTuber, Tim?
Well, Tim, I'll tell you what. It's not surprising that you don't remember anything from it. Because it never happened. I knew it! I do.
Tim wasn't susceptible, but false memories are common and can have real-world implications. The innocence.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there because it's super long. What do we think about what we just saw?